Will lives be lost because of the energy crisis? Welcome to Mark and Pete. Here's a thought.
A grave situation. Britain has fallen into a pit of energy doom, and the poor can't afford to heat their room. No one can see the light to lift the gloom. They're buried in debts like a financial tomb. Clergyman Pete, lives appear to be at risk when this forthcoming winter, and many charities have warned that it could be very, very serious as the energy prices are hiking higher and higher. What do you think of the consequences as a result of the increased energy costs?
While the increased energy costs are going to be so high, forecasts, including by our esteemed Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Finance Minister, are that even those households earning around £45,000 a year could struggle to cope with the prices because they're going to shoot up so much. I mean, the energy price cap is already set to virtually double from its already high level. So it's going to get so high that it's going to financially ruin people unless something is done fast.
Yes. What's worrying is it's the same old adage, heat or eat, and in some cases, neither. Now, a typical household gas and electricity bill will rise potentially to £3,549 a year. Now, that is predicted from October of 2022 onwards. And this is from Ofgem, as they have done their analysis. Now, what's also more important to note is that some of the charities, like Save the Children, have said that young people's health was at risk, and the money expert Martin Lewis predicted grave consequences without more state help. Now, of course, state help is always one option, but what we're really looking at here is the government actually doing enough? Are they pulling the right levers? Now, as we speak at this moment in time, we are looking for a new Prime Minister. Will it be Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak? Either way, some tough decisions do need to be made. So let's explore what they could potentially do. Clergyman Pete, what are your thoughts in what the next Prime Minister should be considering urgently?
Well, Businessman Mark, just from my perspective, it looks as though some drastic measures need to be taken. It just seems, it's strange to say this, but it seems that both candidates for becoming Prime Minister and other spokesmen for the government don't seem to be seeing how urgent and how terrible the situation is. We don't have the luxury of continuing certain expensive policies that we've done maybe for conscience sake. We need to focus in on what's important. It's a bit like when your body's in an extreme situation, like it's in extreme cold, as people might be if they can't afford to pay their fuel bills. When it gets to that sort of state, you're in hypothermic state, then all your blood is withdrawn from your extremities and just gets fed to the vital organs like the heart and in my case the brain. I'm not sure about you, Mark, but you know the same thing is true for a country when you're in this sort of dire situation, that the fuel supply is too low, so the energy prices are going up, coupled with other pressures like the food supply chains being suspect, so that there could be problems with food as well. And of course, increasing energy costs exacerbate that, the delivery, of foods from distance requiring fuel. Now, with all that in mind, I think we need to do drastic things. I think we need to cut the carbon taxes for more fuel and stop these green projects that are meant to be funded by that. Just stop them, cut them, so that we are in a position to have fuel at a lower cost. I think we should be freeing up the regulations such that we can, do fracking, get at gas, which we have used reservoirs in the north of England and under the North Sea, and start accessing those fuel which belong to us in Britain and get those on tap as soon as possible. Those are the sort of measures, those drastic measures that we should be taking. Alongside this, I'll just mention one other, and that is we should stop getting involved in the foreign war in Ukraine. We've taken too much of an interest in it, and the sooner it gets to a negotiated settlement, the better. And the best way to do that is for us to pull out of sending in expensive arms, sending in support for Ukraine, force them to have a negotiated settlement, because it's heading that way anyway.
Yep.
And because once there is no war there, once Russia is free again, maybe we can have the fuel delivery that we had before. Maybe not exactly the same, but it would take the pressure that's pushing in the opposite direction, such that Russia is not going to be sending its fuel to Europe anymore, which has a knock-on effect for Britain. So those are the things that I would say, all drastic, but I think drastic measures are required.
Well, drastic measures are required, and to your point, just to close out on the Ukraine thing, billions of pounds have been sent that way.
Yeah.
Now, I know that in itself is quite a big subject, but there are other measures that certainly the United Kingdom government could consider. We're in a true sense of crisis. Sometimes the term is overused, but I think in this particular case, it's apt. You know, when people are going to be in a situation where they're having to see their bills rising at sort of alarming rates, it's way beyond what most people can afford now. And I think that when we look at what a government typically does with its resources, with its funds, should we now be sort of thinking about curtailing some of the other funds that we typically put elsewhere? You mentioned about Ukraine. What about the foreign aid? It's been discussed many, many times. We're very generous as a nation. We should be considerate in that way. And I know that we have obligations because it's sort of baked into law. However, there is the problem here that there are millions of people that are going to suffer, and it's already been predicted by charities that many people would die as a result of not either being able to heat their homes or eat, or possibly both. So should that mean that we should think about, if we are to be responsible and to future-proof ourselves, should we not be now thinking about sort of helping ourselves? And it is a balance, because we know there are many other communities around the world that do need these funds. They're worthy causes. But unfortunately, we have worthy causes on our own doorstep. So that's one option. Now, okay, there's other levers that the government can push, whether it be reducing tax, whether it be on fuels, whether it be reducing national insurance. And I can see that definitely that whoever becomes the prime minister, they've got to start thinking fast, because these are inevitable things. It's not going to go away. We're not likely, even though we have had a heat wave recently, it's not going to go through the whole of the winter. Now, here's another thought I was thinking, which is about what businesses could do. So businesses are obviously keen on making sure that they have, for the well-being of their staff and employees. It might be that there may be some aid that could be helped there, to either for those who are working at home, or those who even have to come in to the office, etc., or have a hybrid working situation. Maybe there is some aid that they can help them with on that front. So I do think that businesses also need to contribute in this way too. It's not just about the government, although I do believe the government definitely needs to do a lot more. Because I think that, whether it be price caps set by a regulator, that's the other thing as well. Should Ofgem be thinking more creatively in other ways? I think there are multiple stakeholders. Here's the other thing as well, and Clergyman Peter, welcome your thoughts. I do know that it's not, the onus isn't always on individuals just simply not to put the lights on, put the heating on, etc. But there are one or two little things that they can do to help themselves just a little bit. And it's interesting where, do you need to leave all the lights on while you're walking around the house? Do you need to boil up the kettle where it's completely full? By the time actually some people have sort of calculated costs, you could save many, many pounds through a given year. And so I think it is basically what we're looking for is a united front. But I do think ultimately, if the government doesn't step in and do something now, it's inevitable that there's going to be a social unrest. We're already seeing this in certain parts of the country anyway. So here's the prediction. We've seen this before, haven't we, Clergyman Pete? In the 1980s, the early 80s, Margaret Thatcher had to deal with riots in Toxteth, Handsworth, Brixton and many other places because the economy was poor. It wasn't necessarily just an energy crisis, although we did have that in the 1970s. So is it inevitable that we're going to see more problems on our streets? I wonder what you think. You're closer to the community.
Well, yes. Now I'm up near Liverpool, where there have been problems in the past with that regard, with people taking to the streets, and it seems that it's heading in that direction. I think the measures that we've both talked about, some of them I think that the government will do. I think there's going to be at least a move on reducing tax if Liz Truss gets to be Prime Minister. But on the other hand, she's very big on supporting the war in Ukraine. So I think that there isn't going to be enough done. Therefore, the fuel prices will go up. There won't be enough fuel maybe to heat everyone's home. People are going to be ruined if they do heat it. I think with that, coupled with the fact that they may not be able to have enough food to eat, that's going to drive social unrest. It just always does. Not enough food, you can't eat your home, you're not happy. And it's not inevitable in that sense, in the sense that there's nothing that could stop it. People could decide, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to riot on the streets, but people will be pushed to it. So the most likely thing to happen, unless tremendous pressure is put on the government to make these changes, is that we're going to see a huge winter of discontent in the UK, to borrowing a phrase from the 70s when there were issues.
Yes.
This winter, I can see coming. We need to prepare. You need to make sure that you are prepared, to stay off the streets at certain times, and save money in order to be able to pay for the fuel bill. There's various things, things that, if you can, but are you in a position to do that? So with that, apart from the solutions that we put forward, I don't see what in general there is to be done. I think we're in for hard times. As a clergyman, there is one thing that I would mention, though. I'd say we need to pray.
Yes.
I think these are dark times, and that's the only solution I have. If the common sense policies that we suggested are put into place, and other things we haven't heard of, which no doubt our listeners will let us know in the comments.
Yes.
What about you, Mark? What is your thoughts about the future? Are we going to see people on the streets rioting?
I think it's inevitable, but I would also offer one other thought, and I think that this is being considered as well, which is energy companies themselves should now be preparing what I'll call special financial arrangements with their customers to offset the costs. Now, that I know is kicking the can down the road, but the point here is any measure, not just from all the ones we mentioned about the government, not just the ones on regulation, etc., but any measure that can help people get through this particular period, whilst we hope that the government can get its act together. Because let's be honest, I think by the time that we do get a new Prime Minister, which of course is set for September 2022, that's too late. I mean, the
issue is, of course, the main problem is going to be in the winter.
Yes, but if you have a payment plan in place, knowing that there is a fee that you're going to have to pay, and people already are declaring they can't pay it, something needs to be done to help them. And so it is a case of, all stakeholders need to be part of this. But I think it's inevitable. Yes, there's going to be some harsh times.
I think that is a very good idea, somehow trying to offset the payment. I mean, but I think we're looking really at least 2 winters, though.
Potentially.
I wouldn't have thought it was going to be that good. Well, tune in next time for another cheerful episode of Marco P. But seriously, do let us know your thoughts. We'd be glad to hear from you. Just go to markandpete.com. We use Spreaker as our podcast distribution service. Just sign up there, and it's free, and you can leave comments. One thing we find is once you start listening to the Mark and Pete episodes, you listen to all of them, but please leave a comment on each one, because we want to have your feedback, not just our thoughts. But I guess that's I don't think I have enough energy for any more on that, Mark. That's it for this week. Bye. Catch you next time.